In this presentation, we will be discussing the Tinker v. Des Moines case by Gio, Jenna, Abigail, Remy, and Karen. The initial incident took place at a public school in Des Moines, Iowa in December of 1965. A group of students planned to wear black armbands to school in protest of the Vietnam War and to promote a truce. When some faculty found out about their plans, they met to make a policy banning the armbands because they felt that they were distracting and not appropriate for a learning environment, and they decided that a refusal of the student to take off the armband would result in their suspension and they would be sent home. And this actually happened to Mary Beth Tinker and others. Some of the students' parents ended up suing for their children's right of free speech because they felt that the school had violated them. And the case was taken to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Iowa, which sided with the school. The parents ended up appealing the case to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit, but the parents lost this case, and it was finally taken to the Supreme Court.
The arguments for Tinker regarding the black armbands included that it did not violate anyone else's rights in any way, shape, or form. Their actions were covered by the First Amendment, which includes the freedom of speech, and there was also no indication of disruption of school and/or class, and student rights should be protected in school, and they were not given a fair trial as they were suspended almost immediately and the teachers would not hear them out, and this violated the 14th Amendment, which is the due process of law, and schools typically don't halt students from using symbolic wear.
Attorney Alan Herrick represented the Des Moines School District, and his arguments during the court's hearing were how the students' armbands were simply disruptive, and how this was a preventative measure rather than a response to an actual immediate threat. The overall arguments against Tinker were disobedience from students would encourage negative effects in other schools and the country as a whole. A school must have rules in order to function and maintain a disruptive-free environment. School discipline forms students into well-educated and civilized students, so the deliberate disobedience and the acts of the students were interfering with this idea. The school system was simply trying to maintain a learning environment without tensions and distractions. The First Amendment does not apply for students, since school is a place to learn, not to protest. The armbands also caused tensions and diverted students' minds from their lessons. And an additional point is how the district thought that individual rights were simply permissions that could be withdrawn at any time the community decided that it was necessary. So, therefore, there really were no individual rights.
Influence and impact of the decision on the nation. The Supreme Court ruled that students and teachers can continue to have the rights of free speech and expression when they are at school under the First Amendment of the Constitution. Though these rights are protected, school administration can still restrict areas deemed to distract or disrupt learning, as seen through enforcing school dress codes. This ultimately defended the rights of student freedom of speech and expression. Some examples include anti-armbands and student protest. In today's modern time, social media is a big platform for students to express how they feel about their education and can also spread awareness on school issues.
Analyzing the arguments and decision of the Supreme Court, it would end up obvious in legal terms why a greater majority of the court chose Tinker rather than Des Moines, with a vote of 7-2 for Tinker versus Des Moines. Tinker's arguments included references to the amendments, specifically the First and 14th, stating that they shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, and no state shall enforce any law that abridges privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. As this case dealt with the repression of students' rights, the Tinker position was legally correct, and students would be defined as citizens. Since the judges are the ones who interpreted the Constitution, the legality of the case leans towards Tinker, and an unmentioned implication for Des Moines is that the Constitution is a live document, so ideologies and interpretations may change over time, but the judicial decision at the time leaned towards Tinker. Another argument for Des Moines was the distraction of the armbands, but as ACLU.org mentions, that is a loose term and has no grasp on legality. They also have considered rules created by the school, though this may have been nullified by the 14th Amendment.